We have an unidentified flying object.
Researcher on a mission with Dr. J Andy Ilias.
We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Let's turn to Tom Schaefer. He happens to be the author of Two and the Collectors. Now, here is the problem. Two and the Collectors was written as a novel, but so many people that have read it have actually written to Tom and said, is this really a cover for a nonfiction for something that really happened to you? Or is this something given to you in a dream? So, Tom, welcome to the show. And let me ask you this question. Why do so many people think your book was real?
Hey, Dr. J, man, good to talk to you. I am excited. I tell you what, I'm an Imagineer, okay? And if people tell me that they think it was a vision, I'm not going to argue with them. Maybe it was. I think what we're finding out in science and in what some people call pseudoscience, there's starting to become a bridge between the paranormal, what some people in academia dismiss as, that's just, it's a bunch of pseudoscience, these guys are just yakking. They're just making stuff up. People are finding out that the science is starting to admit that it doesn't know what it think it did. It's kind of a crude way of saying it, but there's so much that we don't know. There's just so much that we don't know. So anyway, my book, it might be a vision. I don't know. I don't see it that way personally, but if other people are telling me that, who am I to argue? Maybe it is. Maybe it's a vision,
I got something really interesting that just came through the hashtag DM Talk Twitter feed. And this is really cool because a lot of people talk about this, including Bob Lazar, Nassim Harriman, who everybody will happen to hear in the next show with Art Bell, Midnight in the Desert. Or you could actually hear it on YouTube in the last interview I did with him on June 2nd. And this question, or should I say it's a comment, if you have the power to generate mini black holes, you have the power to manipulate time. Einstein said so. And what do you think about that statement? Because when Bob Lazar, in February, when he spoke at the International UFO Congress, he made it very clear that if we have the power to control gravity, things that are science fiction are literally thrown away and turned into science fact that day. We would then have the ability to create force fields, to alter time, space, therefore, time travel.
Exactly.
Wormholes.
See, there are people, this is the whole frustrating thing, is that we have a suspicion, people in the UFOlogy community, scientists that are sympathetic to all of this, we have a suspicion that the government knows what's going on, that they've already known, that they've, you listen to Dr. Greer speak, he gave a talk in May, I believe it was, where he talked about knowing a man who already had all the formulas figured out for anti-gravity, for teleportation, for a lot of these sciences, the big three, anti-gravity, teleportation, and alternative energy. This guy figured it out, and they sequestered him away, and this guy has been, he's under lock and key basically at the point of a gun. So there is this suspicion that our government or some controlling entity has these secrets, that mankind figured them out on their own, and they've been corroborated by the fact that we've been getting these visitors from other places, either other places, other times, other dimensions, etc. So the logical mind says there's a certain amount of plausibility to these concepts. It doesn't seem that far-fetched to those of us that entertain science, that we enjoy science. I'm just a hack. I'm not a scientist. I'm an Imagineer. And when I hear these concepts like, wow, they just found this planet, Kepler 452, or wow, the possibilities of anti-gravity, or wow, they just figured out in a lab that they can create using high-powered lasers, the concepts of replication are on the dawn. We're in the primordial soup of all these concepts right now. And yet some of it may be sequestered away. The public domain is starting to see light of some of these things. And so we're in this rocks and sticks dawn. We're like those apes that are kind of surrounding the monolith in 2001. That's where we're at. We're kind of like looking at these advanced concepts. We can't replicate them. We can't, it's like trying to give an iPhone to an ape. There's no way he's
Yeah.
going to be able to
Actually, I'm
understand it.
so glad you brought that up because Bob Lazar, when people asked him, I think it was George Knapp who asked him, have we been able to replicate or back in
Exactly.
reverse
I heard
engineer
that
this?
yeah.
They reverse engineer the sports model, the alien craft that he was working on. He chuckled and said, "Heck no!" And that's equivalent to throwing an iPhone to a wagon train in the 1800s and saying, "Here, make us 500 of these," And
Right. So listen to this idea then. So here you have now this new openness in our society. This gentleman that was on before talking about his experience, and you guys have got 4 hours of
yes,
discussion. I mean,
yes.
we could sit around the campfire and listen to that stuff because there's a huge openness. We want to know. We want to go there. So my book is a playground for these concepts. And as much as it's science fiction, science fiction is the playground of what if, and part of the workaday world is to remove all of that. Your workaday world is to show up for work, shut up, do what you're told, and get to work. We don't have time for all that imagination. You need to get to work and you need to produce. Science fiction is a timeout. Science fiction is the playground of the mind. It's time to play. It's time to say, well, this Kepler 452b, wow, what if we could go there? That would be awesome. We can't go there. Well, we need transportation. So the mind begins to think, wow, if I just had some sort of transportation, well, if I just had life support systems, we're very close. And if we had the propulsion systems or the ability to jump space, we would be there in orbit right now. This idea of traveling at 23,000 miles and taking 10 years, 23,000 miles an hour and taking 10 years to get there is silly. And we're going to look back, if we survive, we'll look back 10 years from now when somebody stumbles along in the next 10 years, the ability to use some technology for us to jump space. And whether we figure it out on our own through our own scratching and digging, or if we are assisted, we will find a way to jump space. We will find a way to make it across space. And then it'll really be a matter of what can you take with you and how long will it last when you get there? And that's what my book describes. It describes a secret space program that's been instituted by help from outside.
Well, let me ask you this question, and this is something that actually astronaut Story Musgrave, talked about in an exclusive interview we did with him, which sadly didn't make it to the airwaves here on Dark Matter, but you could hear it on my YouTube channel. And it was a one-on-one interview, actually two-on-one with my co-host Johnny Webb, who is in London but is now happened to be in Indonesia for the next couple months, and he was talking about the ethics of colonizing other planets. What happens if we go to another planet and we start terraforming it so us humans can move to it? But what if by terraforming it we end up killing the life on it, even if it happens to be microbes or
well, you're introducing a lot of hypotheticals. Let's just work with what we know right now. For example, there's this whole concept of going to Mars and we're going to colonize Mars. Well, what are you going to bring in the NASA framework? What's going to happen within the NASA framework? Those people that go are all going to be within whatever framework they brought from Earth.
Yes.
I doubt there's going to be a new government. I doubt there's going to be any kind of a change. They're going to be living under similar conditions as to what we have here. It's just a survival.
Don't forget, worst part is a lot of these people who have volunteered, there's no return mission. Once they go, they're going to stay.
And so this is all within the rocks and sticks technology that we are experiencing right now that some people laud as the greatest advances of mankind. It's not that great. We're barely scratching the surface and we're barely getting off this planet. And it's like you mentioned one time before, and we have nuclear weapons and we're running into space, exploding weapons into space. There's a lot of problems with mankind. There's a huge segment of mankind that's very advanced in its thinking. It's very high level in thinking. There's a huge segment, the kind of like the things that Dr. Greer talks about. There's a high level out there. There's a group of people with a higher consciousness out there. And yet we still have on this planet, we have greedy, the greedy military industrial complex. We have the so-called, what conspiracy theorists like to relate to, the Illuminati, and God only knows if any of that stuff's true. But there are controllers of this planet, and there are murderous religious ideologies that, like Bill Maher said, have, like Islam is a religion of bad ideas. We have these conflicting societal segments on this planet. You don't have a unified planet reaching for the stars as a unified race. We have a pocket of people that get it, and then we have giant segments that don't, and then we have even more segments that don't care. And they're only out for what they can get in this lifetime, and they're more worried about paying their bills, and they don't even have any clue about a higher cosmic perspective. And so those are the things that we're struggling with. And those are some of the things that I deal with in the book, this concept of colonization. And the whole thing, as I began to kind of unravel the onion on this, is I don't think we're going to be able to do it without help.
Yes.
I just don't see it happening without help.
Well,
That's me. That's my opinion.
Let me throw a few things out there. First of all, I'm glad you brought up the military-industrial complex. If everyone recalls, when Eisenhower left the office of the presidency in 1961, handing it off to President Kennedy, who won the election in 1960, what did he say? Beware of the military-industrial complex. Now, why would someone who was president of the United States, purportedly the most important or most powerful nation in the world police, who was the supreme Allied commander during World War II, who was credited for essentially
take it from a general.
Yes,
take it from the general.
Yes, taking
exactly.
it from the general, essentially winning the war by planning and launching the Normandy invasion. Right? Why would he say such a thing when he was part of it?
Too. Dr. J, there's also this lore too in ufology, is that he was shown a holographic image of the crucifixion of Christ by ETs at Area 51. I don't know how much of that is true, but he's sitting there and you go, okay, maybe this guy did have an inside track on what's really going on in ufology. I don't know. But take it from this guy, he understood at a higher level. And you think people want to think that people in the past didn't have insight. This guy had incredible insight, and needs to be given credit. And he talked about the cost of the military and what we could be buying at that time in those dollars, what we could be buying versus spending the money on missiles and bombers, what we could buy, fixing our infrastructure. We have the capacity as a planet to solve world hunger. We have the capacity to solve every shelter problem. There's a lot of logic that we're all asked to excuse. Oh, don't buy into that. For example, if you look at it from strictly kind of a logical standpoint, we have enough technology to house and clothe and feed everyone on this planet.
But we don't. We spend it all on arms and warfare.
Well, even still, we could still feed, clothe, and house people. But we add a lot of what some people would call, we add a story to this. We say that, well, some people deserve, some don't. You need to work for this. You need to be part of the slave industrial complex. So there are layers that are added to the simplicity of the logic, is that mankind actually has the technology to feed and clothe every human on this planet, and with surplus. We have the technology, but we don't. So my book takes us away from this planet. My book takes us into a place where an advanced race becomes kind of the fatherly help. Kind of like, okay, you folks have messed it up. We're going to show you a better way. Now, I know there's another story out there that's already happened, The Childhood's End, which is coming out, I think, this fall. But that story, the benevolent aliens in that story actually wind up becoming not so benevolent. In my story, they stay benevolent. They really want to see humanity succeed. And so they've terraformed a planet, and they've created a place for us to go to that launches us into other places. So the story is really the launch of a kind of a science fiction franchise.
Let me say this to you. Linda Moulton Howe actually says that our planet was terraformed starting 270 million years ago.
It's quite possible. Why would it not be possible? Anything is possible. I'm learning every day that anything is possible.
Well, Murphy's Law, what can happen probably will
Think about
happen.
the stuff that scientists dig up now. There are archaeological discoveries of artifacts that don't make any sense, hammers and iron things and gold things that don't make any sense. There's a hidden history to planet Earth that we're only got a glimpse of. The pyramids that could not be connected by normal technology or communication methods, and yet these pyramids throughout the planet have similar sacred geometry to them. Okay, come on, something's going on or has gone on in the past that we haven't been given history to. So my book says, okay, let's just take it for a ride. Let's just say these people came back. Let's say that they have good intentions and they want to help us move to the next level. That's what the book's all about. And it's a playground for the exploration of these ideas. And what would we do when we get there? What kind of government would you have? Well, you're probably not going to need a whole lot of government.
Let me say something really interesting to you. This actually came in from the Twitter feed, and this is from Dan. It goes by at Don Dan L, and it says rocket tech will not get you to another planet. It's all for great big propaganda fireworks. Simply can't
Exactly.
carry the fuel. I
Exactly.
believe that because if you think about it, what sort of mass would you be able to have have the amount of energy to travel at the speed of light, or to use the sort of okay, let me ask you this question. This always bugs me. Why are we using ancient technology to fly to the stars or the moon? Why
you
are
have
we
a lot of
using
people. There's a lot of
giant fireworks? We're burning chemicals. This is so old. I mean, why?
Right. Well, then you have two tracks. There are people that believe there are two tracks. There's the public track using mainstream academics and accepted mainstream academics. The college track and the NASA track. Okay, and then there's the dark space program that nobody knows about, and they're already using jump rooms. They're already using all of these technologies. So we have two tracks. So yes, it seems absolutely silly to be using 1,000-year-old Chinese rocket technology to go to the stars. That's just silly. So if they're spending trillions of dollars that they create on their own to go these places, and these resources are allocated, and there's already what some call breakaway civilizations where they've already gone and planted human colonies for the sake of furthering the human race, blah, blah, blah. We don't know if any of this stuff is true, but it's good. It's plausible. It's highly plausible that these technologies are already being used. And I think the only way you could travel the giant reaches of space would be through some sort of, quote, jump technology.
Or black hole. Exactly. Like it's instantly like a black hole, where a wormhole essentially was something that bends
I have a
space.
sense. I have a sense that it's not really a black hole, but it's a jump. That it's a quantum jump. Because now we hear from
let me ask you this: see? I wouldn't know this technology or this sort of science, but maybe you can answer this question. What would be the difference between a quantum jump and the ability to create a wormhole, which would essentially be bending the fabric of space instead of having a straight line to point A and B, folding it together and just instantly traversing from one to the other?
Here's what I think, and I get the question. Here's what I think. I think that we think in terms of creating this giant. Okay, he's going to create a giant portal, and it's going to be this giant thing out there, and then they're going to go through it. I think that it's as advanced as these people are, these entities, these ETs, whoever they are. I think when they do it, for them, it's like it's like electricity to us. It's very simple for us to generate electricity. For them, that moment is very simple. It's as simple as as an example as what we saw in that TV show, Battlestar Galactica, the latest one. They made an announcement and said, we're going to this point, and boom, we're getting ready to jump. You didn't see a lot of special effects. They just did it. And I think that's the level that whoever's doing that's coming here, it's that simple. It's really more of a light switch technology. It's not something where there's a big dramatic, get ready to go to hyperspace, get ready to open the portal, get ready to open the gate. I don't know. We don't see those in the sky. Maybe that one over Norway was something like that, but we don't see that. We see them showing up, and they just do it. And so I think in the future, or whatever we come up with, I think it's going to be very simple. Quantum mechanics is finally admitting that observing the these things in quantum mechanics actually disturbs them. So there's a lot we don't know that we're just now discovering, that in 5 years, everything we're saying right now is going to be deleted. It's just going to be silly. It's going to be silly to even admit that we said what we said, and that these races, what they are doing, coming here with the advanced technology they have, we just look like jungle tribesmen to them, and so, or less. And so I think Mr. Friedman was saying before, is the arrogance of science to think that we know. We don't know. We're just stumbling into things right now, this is a great age. We're just now breaking through. And if the technology has already been discovered and sequestered away from us, and this other track is just, the public track is just now being exposed to it, is that by plan? Is that by accident or by design that now they're revealing some of these things? Like, they can't hide all of those space station UFO footage. It's getting more difficult to hide it all the time. I just don't see that they can hide it from us anymore,
That's right. And you're absolutely right that they can't hide it for that much longer, because the technology that we as civilians have access to is rising at such an exponential rate. You have to take that into account. And one thing I love, and this is confirmed by people who work in military, especially in special ops, such as Navy SEALs or Delta Force. Okay, the technology we have, if we're just using scales and I'm rounding up numbers, if what we have, the best thing is, say, the latest iPhone, well, then what the normal soldier going into the battlefield would have something that would be maybe 5 to 10 years advanced, something much, much better. But then when you jump to something such as the Navy SEALs, then you're talking something that's maybe 2 decades in advance. I mean, they were using, at least I knew of a Navy SEAL who doesn't believe in conspiracies, does not really participate in anything what we said, except to tell me that this took years of me breaking him down to talk about his missions of when he was a SEAL, that after he was a SEAL, he ended up being a mercenary and did 2 missions where he happened to contribute to bringing large shipments of cocaine to the United States funded by the CIA. How do you like that? But the point that I was trying to make was that he said that in that year when he served, 66 to 69, the technology he had available to him as a Navy SEAL was much, much better than anything that our regular soldiers had even 20 years later.
Well, that's the thing, is that you hear this all the time in ufology, is that the dark projects group has stuff that's 40 years ahead of us, 20 to 40 years ahead of everything you see in the public space, and that's pure speculation. I don't know. And then maybe that's from witnesses that have seen it. I don't know. But, in science fiction land, we can break all the rules in science fiction, but science fiction is the great inspirer. It's like I said, it's the playground of inspiration. For example, the communicator in Star Trek is what ultimately led to cell phones. We wanted that. We saw it. We saw them using it. We saw what they did with it, and it became something we all wanted. And before that, it was stuff like Forbidden Planet. And I just happened to watch Forbidden Planet again the other night. It was really kind of a fascinating look at great science fiction, in spite of the lack of, it was not cheesy. The special effects, you could tell, were done very well for that time frame. They were using concepts that even though the film and the special effects of the time were not that great, the concepts were awesome.
Well, let me actually read you a question. I think this is really interesting. This comes from Graviton Fish, a listener, again, from DM Talk, the Twitter feed on the Dark Matter Digital Network.com, the Twitter feed. And again, people in the tunein.com chat room can also submit their questions. Associate producer Danny Benton is out there taking them and, of course, bringing them. So by all means, here's the question that comes through Graviton Fish. How about isolating, or in quotes, pulling a craft off our brain, in parentheses, universe, and traveling the bulk five-dimensional space. What do you think about that?
Well, it may be that that's the future, is that we think in terms of space travel in spaceships. We want to get there with our physical bodies, but the future may actually involve going there in a different way. And what we talk about now is so antiquated, as much as we might think of, the smokestack era of the Industrial Revolution back in the 1800s looks as silly to us now. The concepts of space travel in the future may well be in a more cosmic way, if you will, a more non-physical way. It may be remote viewing. It may be advanced soul travel. These things are as the more we get open to what's really out there, the more we take away some of the walls that we've put up about concepts. Oh, that's not possible. Why, this is how it all fits in this box. Well, maybe the box is very small and you need to kind of step outside the box, get outside that box and really enjoy the ride. Allow the imagination because it was given to us. Our imagination is part of the gifting of the human race. And whether it was given to us by gods or whether it was something evolved, I don't care. It came with the kit. It's what you get. You have an imagination. And the more people that utilize their imagination, the more things you take the imagination. Tesla dreamed of some of the things that he actually created. And so the imagination's huge. And so when I tell a story that has no basis in fact, but I'd explore concepts, or when we look at science fiction on television that's really well done, like even bad science fiction or even mediocre, it doesn't matter. Anytime you explore science fiction concepts, you explore space and you explore humanity's interaction with alien species, you're expanding the mind, because then when it really happens, you've prepared your mind for how you might react. For example, Star Trek studied the whole concept of interacting with alien species and what it might be like. It explored technologies that became utilitarian. Warp drive became very utilitarian to those people. They just like kick it into gear and go. We didn't talk about whether it was possible or not. It was already possible in their world. We didn't talk about whether replication was possible or not. It's already possible. They just made tea and kept moving. So a lot of what we think is going to be an oh wow moment is going to become antiquated and deletable. It's going to become a non-moment for us in the future. And I think one of the liberating things in the future is going to be replication. Nobody's really talking about how replication is going to free humanity from the work slave trap if it's allowed to progress. Replication will free humanity from from the socioeconomic slave mills that we live in now. The liberation of replication is going to free humanity. It's just not discussed. But we're looking at the dawn of replication through things like 3D printers, and now they're actually talking about the ability to create matter using high-powered lasers. So replication is going to free humanity, and it's going to change society drastically. And people like Gene Roddenberry talked about it, but nobody really explored it. Nobody really looked in depth at how the first replicators were going to change society. If everybody has a replicator and everybody can create what they need, well, then why do I need to go to work?
I agree exactly, and that I'm so glad you mentioned that we're still at the pick and shovel or rocks and stone age in that sense, because in terms of civilization, a couple thousand years really is nothing, and really our real civilization hasn't started since I would really estimate since the point of electricity. That's when we've had this giant evolution that's just been going up at an astronomical scale and an exponential scale. And I think if you continued on the path but did not destroy the earth, did not destroy ourselves, we really would be capable of so much more. Can you imagine what 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or a million years ahead of us would do, considering if we stayed on the path but took away the killing and deaths? Now, Tom, I want to warn you, we got about 10 minutes left of the show, and I want to go with you with a couple minutes. Then I want to talk to the listeners with you about the show before we go. So by all means, answer that question and then say whatever you'd like to say before we.
All right, you said a lot. What was the question?
Well, I was talking about what do you think the possibilities would be if or take this into account. If we've literally started our civilization at the time Edison implemented electricity or Tesla, started using the AC current, just basically 150 years ago, that's what I really think is when our
You know,
civilization started to take off.
there was a
Imagine
classic.
us 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or a million years, minus the war and the killing
Right.
and the death of the planet.
Isn't that a composite? Isn't society as a whole a composite kind of as our personal lives? How many times have we all been told, you know what, if you just stop self-sabotaging, you can move forward, you can go farther, and we all have to deal with that personally. And so we also have it on a grander scale of society self-sabotaging. We have these murderous religious ideas going on. We have stifling concepts that hold people back. We have a lot of in the movie business, they talk about suspension of disbelief. We need you to just kind of go along with this sci-fi moment here. But let's talk about reality for a moment. We are asked to suspend logic in a huge part of our lives. And you're right, it cripples us. For example, there are things every day that people see that's like, well, why did they do that? Like I read an article about some city, some guy wrote a big front page, he rented an ad to criticize a police department that wrote a ticket because he parked in backwards. And you think about stuff like that, you think, wow, I thought we were advancing, but I see stuff like this and I see we're really not getting that far. There's a huge portion of our society that is self-sabotaging, that is kind of like swimming down here in the bottom in the mud. And there are people like you and I and a lot of the folks in this community that see greater. We do imagine greater, just to take Sci-Fi Channel's little phrase. We do imagine greater, and we see a greater possibility. And we look at silly stuff going on or murderous stuff going on the planet, these wars and all this stupidity. It's just really, it's embarrassing.
It really is. It really, really is. Tom, we have literally about 7 minutes, and I want to talk about the show. So I'm going to ask you first if you want to make any final statement, and then of course I want you to help talk about the show because you've become an integral part. Let's tell people where they can find your book, because obviously it's created a lot of controversy where a lot of people have accused you of, labeling it a novel when a lot of people say that's actually happening.
Well, it's the spinning of science and science fiction, and I'll let them have it. You know what? If it's a vision, I'll let them have it. But let me just give the book, the location of the book. You can find it. It's called Two in the Collectors.
TU.
TU is the name of the planet. I created a planet, and I created a complete science fiction story around it about a group of people called the Collectors who are taking is a pre-disclosure team that is bringing things from Earth to this planet, to this other planet, getting this planet ready for the migration of humanity to this planet. So things are already being done behind the scenes. The roadies are getting everything in place. They are the Collectors. They're getting people ready to go to this planet. So it's twointhecollectors.com. It's TU and thecollectors.com. You can go there. You can buy the book. It's on Amazon. And I just encourage people to engage with me in the discussion and to take the ride with me. I want to take you to this planet. There's a government. It's not really a government. There's really less government there. But I invite you to come with me on this journey of what if we could go there, and what would it be like when we get there? What would it be like to have an organic planet that isn't polluted, that doesn't have GMOs? They don't do GMOs. It's all organic. And what would it be like to live in a home that is totally self-sustaining? Things like that. So those are the things that we discuss in the book, and I invite people to come and take a look.
I'm going to say one comment before we talk about the show in general. I thought someone made a really important comment, and actually a guest, Richard Dolan, mentioned this 2 years ago, and then, of course, I saw this happening. This comment, actually, let me go back and find this. This is from, where is it? Observer at PadPow, and this was Replicators is about 3D printers. 3D printers are so fascinating as the first steps to that. I think they are extremely fascinating because all of a sudden, instead of creating a flat design or copying a picture or a piece of paper, you can create, a model of something.
Well,
And,
they've
and
got everything from plastics to biologics. There are some 3D printers now that are doing biological medical implants or medical replacements or organ replacements. This stuff is never ending, and this is the dawn. This is like when the Industrial Revolution first started, and they started making giant, Rube Goldberg type factories. So that stuff evolved into making microchips. We're at the dawn with replication using 3D printers. And so it'll go from spinning plastic layers. It'll go to some sort of energy that is transmitting actual and creating actual particles from a catalog. So you'll actually literally replicate just like you see in science fiction. So we're at that primordial soup age right now, and to see into the future and imagine what that's going to be like. How will that impact society? How will replication impact society? Right now, you can buy a 3D printer, but a lot of people don't see the need for it because they can still go to Walmart. They can still go to, the grocery store and buy the things they need. But if they could create everything they need in their own home, you won't need grocery stores and you won't need UPS. You won't need any of that. It will all occur in your own home. The only thing you'll need is to buy the big things. And then you'll think, well, there's a big replicator down the road. We can go to the library and just create what we
and
need.
just create it. And a
Yes.
lot of people actually talk about that. Now, Tom, I want to thank you so much for this interview. We definitely have to do this again.
Planet Earth, a beautiful planet, a jewel in the cosmos. A planet in trouble because of its most intelligent species. An intelligent race on the verge of self-extinction. Mankind, left to himself, has almost succeeded in self-extinction. Are we destined for a dystopian future? Or can we imagine a different outcome? What if we had help from an advanced race who is ready, willing, and able to help us advance to the next level in our evolution? 2 and the Collectors, a novel by Tom Schaefer. Available at Amazon.com.